Don't Breathe was one of the biggest surprise hits of 2016. With only a budget of $9.9 million, the film went on to gross $89 million domestically and $157 million worldwide. Its concept was simple but effective. What would happen if three young thieves decided to rob a blind man only to find out that he was essentially Michael Myers? It subverted the home invasion genre by flipping it on its head, making it unclear who you should actually root for while at the same time keeping you on the edge of your seat. The sequel, however, switched up this dynamic by only keeping Stephen Lang's character and making him more of an action hero in a film that is more action thriller than it is horror. Does it work? We'll let you decide as we break down the sequel to everyone's favorite horror movie involving a blind man and a turkey baster, Ew, and Don't Breathe, Part 2. But before we begin, if you could, on this page you will notice there's a thumbs up button. It's gray, it's moody, it looks kind of sad, and it's just kind of depressing to look at. So by all means, be sure to slam it, make it a bright shade of blue. That would be really cool. Also, if you didn't guess, there's going to be a lot of spoilers for part 1 and 2 of the Don't Breathe franchise, so be sure to go watch the movie and then come back, or be spoiled by it. I don't care. This is my warning to you. 3, 2, 1, go. In November of 2016, after the success of Don't Breathe, writer director Fede Álvarez announced that he was in the process of writing Don't Breathe Part 2, and that it would take the franchise in a completely different direction. Producer Sam Raimi backed this by saying that it's only the greatest idea for a sequel I've ever heard. I'm not kidding. Then in November of 2018, Álvarez announced that the script for the sequel was completed and that it was once again co-written by Rodo Sayagues. In January of 2020, the title was officially announced as Don't Breathe 2, and the film was set to begin principal photography in April of 2020. Yeah, the worst time. Naturally, filming was delayed due to world events, but then on October 8th, 2020, Lang revealed that the film had finished principal photography and that it would be released on August 13th, 2021. It was also announced that Sayagues, who had never directed a film but co-wrote both of the films, was now going to replace Álvarez as a director, while Álvarez would continue to serve as the film's producer. Now, it's unclear whether or not Álvarez stepped aside from directing because he wanted to go produce the upcoming Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot, or if he just wanted to give his buddy, his co-writer, a chance to direct. Either way, there's always going to be that part of me that wonders what we would have gotten as a finished product had Álvarez stayed on in the second movie. Because let's face it, the second one is not nearly as tense. It is more of an action thriller than it is, say, a horror movie. Can you blame the writing and how it blatantly changed genres?
Of course!
But all I'm saying is that regardless, there's always going to be a part of me that wonders what could have been had Álvarez stayed on as the film's director. Which brings us to the story. Once again, spoilers. Our story takes place 8 years after the events of part 1. We see a young girl named Phoenix walking away from a burning house on the same street that we saw Rocky get dragged down in part 1. Phoenix passes out on the road and enters the blind man, Norman Nordstrom, who picks her up and takes her away. 8 years later, in the present day, the blind man and Phoenix are living together in a new home, not much nicer than the last one. I mean, I guess it's kind of nicer than the last house, but it's still very much in the slums of 8 Mile, Detroit, Michigan. He teaches Phoenix how to become a Jedi, survivalist, by running through an elaborate obstacle course, not too dissimilar to when Rocky ran away from Nordstrom and was also jump scared from behind. We find out that Nordstrom is trying to teach her how to be a survivalist, much like himself, homeschooling her and keeping her away from the rest of the world. But in doing so, he is depriving her from having a normal life. He doesn't let her go to school, he doesn't let her have any friends, he's really kind of a dick. And this is all motivated from the events of the first film, in which we learn that Nordstrom lost his daughter in a car accident, blamed the rich girl who caused the accident, kidnapped her, inseminated her, killed her accidentally, tried to do the same with Rocky, failed, and eventually resorted to kidnapping instead. And beyond that point, you really don't need a recap, right? I'm assuming you saw the movie. And at very least, you probably saw the trailer, which pretty much tells you everything you need to know. These generic-looking criminals decide to break into Nordstrom's home because they want to kidnap the little girl named Phoenix, aka Tara. Why, you ask? Because one of them is her father. We find out that 8 years ago, her dad's house blew up because they were cooking meth in the basement, and he went to jail for 8 years. Simple enough, right? Well, no. Because we're not done. We have another twist. Once her dad steals Tara back away, we find out that her mother, Josephine, is the ringleader meth cook, and that she was injured in the fire and now needs a heart transplant or she's going to die. And the whole reason they steal her back is basically not to be parents, but because they want that heart. They want to do a transplant for the mother because she was injured in the fire, and they used this disgraced organ-stealing doctor who's basically been on the lam for like several months now. However, they are unable to perform the procedure because the old man is able to find them and stop them. How do you ask? Well, because Norman used to have a dog named Shadow. Shadow! Yeah, Shadow. And when the burglars broke in, they killed his dog. Yet for some reason they decided to bring a replacement dog with them to be an attack dog? I'm not sure why. Maybe they just watched John Wick and thought the blind man should never be without a dog. I don't know. The whole dog such a weird thing was kind of stupid. Anyway, the blind man is attacked by the dog and then traps the dog. He saves the dog when the house goes up in flames, and now the dog and him are best friends because, much like one of the meth dealers, the dog also believes that what the drug dealers are doing is inherently wrong, and he wants to help out. So now the dog, on a leash, leads the old blind man, who is now strapped up in weapons because we just had a commando strap-up scene. He leads him all the way into town to where the meth heads are hiding. Kinda hard to distinguish where the hell they're hiding because upstairs the baby daddy has a full bar in his room, and downstairs we have all these surgical procedure rooms, and then in the back of the place there's like an empty pool. The best I can figure is that maybe it's like an old abandoned hotel that went out of business that they're now squatting in, or maybe it's just like the worst hotel on the face of the planet. I don't know. So as the trailers have already pretty much given away, all the bad guys die, and Norman is able to get Phoenix back. However, instead of taking her home or even a local firehouse or something, he just tells her to stay away from him, saying, "I am a murderer, I am a rapist, I am a monster." And much like the Phantom of the Opera, he tells her to go! Go now and leave me! It's very dramatic. Well, that's until the baby daddy, who had just got his eyes gouged out by Norman, gets back up on his feet and stabs Norman in the back. Now, why he didn't just finish him off and kill him is beyond me, but I guess the movie's got a movie. I mean, Norman of all people should have known that how much pain and suffering a blind person can inflict on other people, regardless if they're blind or not. So the little girl comes back and kills him by stabbing him and pushing him into the swimming pool, killing him instantly. And much like Logan or even T2 after killing the main bad guy, the kid is like, "I can save you!" But he's all like, "You already have, blah." Is it me or does Norman sound like Bane from Harley Quinn? The pit! Damn it, Todd. You know my name is Bane, not Bang! Anyway. Then we rip off the professional by showing our little ass kicker go to a local shelter that we saw earlier in the movie. It is then implied that she's accepted. And in case that earlier scene where she's being trained wasn't Rey Skywalker enough, the movie ends with her being asked, "What's your name?" And she replies, "My name is Phoenix, because I totally embrace my non-biological father who sometimes rapes people way more than my biological parents who totally do worse things than that, I think." Because, you know, when you're 11 years old and someone drugs you and tries to literally remove your heart with a surgical saw, I guess the rapist guy isn't as bad? Anyway, after the credits roll, we do get a post-credit scene in which essentially the dog runs up to one of the two dead people. I don't know if it's Raylan, the baby daddy, or if it's Norman Nordstrom, the blind man, but he runs up to one of them, he sniffs their fingers, and I think they say maybe we see one of the guy's fingers move just a little bit, implying that one of those two guys is still alive. Honestly, I think, based on what I read online, I think it's Stephen Lang's character, the blind man, but I've also seen some pretty big comic book outlets report on it saying that it's actually Raylan. So comment down below if you saw that post-credit scene, because I'm really interested to see who they're implying is still alive, because that is opening the door completely for what we might get in part 3. Now this is where things get really interesting, because essentially there's already a lot of buzz about a Don't Breathe Chapter 3. But, you know, how would that actually play out? Hopefully Hollywood doesn't do something stupid like Halloween Part 3, where they make Raylan the main antagonist. You know, he's trying to find his daughter who maybe ran away, and she has to use her, like, survival skills to try to fight him off. That would be a terrible idea. It'll be bad. What you could do is bring back the character of Rocky, played by Jane Levy in the first one. However, according to Twitter, it seems like Jane Levy and Fede Álvarez had a falling out. On a recent tweet not that long ago, Álvarez went on saying that he wanted to bring her back, but didn't because he felt that she wasn't having a good time on set. That the way that they basically filmed it was very like a meta directing kind of way, where, you know, he would tell her, "Okay, we're gonna creep up on you, and then Stephen Lang is gonna jump up at you from the right." And then they would film it, and he would jump in from the left. And she basically responded by saying that, yeah, I would not return for part 2, but, you know, A, you probably should have asked me, and 2, what kind of world are we living in where the filming is done in such a way that somebody wouldn't want to return? That was kind of the gist I got from her Twitter tweet. But that's basically the gist of it. There's also a deleted scene from the first Don't Breathe in which we see Stephen Lang's character follow Rocky at the train station, implying that he was going to get revenge on her by following her. I can see why they cut it. It's a little far-fetched. But those are all the things that we know about Don't Breathe Part 3. We know that they're interested in making it. We know that it's going to make more money than it costs for them to make, so of course they're going to keep going with it. They could even go like the Halloween 2018 route, and if this movie is not well received, which it kind of is, they could just scrap it altogether. I do know that Alvarez was talking about how we haven't seen all of Rocky's story, and maybe that might be a thing that we explore down the road. But what do you think of Don't Breathe Part 2? Personally, I think that it really does struggle in its writing and direction. I don't think you have the same tension that you have in the first one. It felt very much like they ripped off T2, The Professional, Logan. That ending scene is very much like Logan. There's a lot of ripoffs in this movie. There's even one scene in particular where the one guy is like, "Who do you want me to get?" And he's like, "Get me everybody." Or he doesn't say get me everybody, but he's like, "Go get everyone!" And he screams it. And I couldn't help but be reminded of The Professional, when Gary Oldman looks at the camera and says,
"Bring me everyone." What do you mean everyone?
Everyone! Right? There's even a scene earlier in the movie where it's very much Home Alone, because they're in the garden, they're in the greenhouse again, because, you know, Norman Nordstrom really loves his greenhouse. It's a different house, but he's got his greenhouse. And they're in there, and Norman runs back into the house, and one of the bad guys is like, "He went back inside!" And the other bad guy is just like, "No, he wants us to go in there after him." And I'm like, I'm watching this clip going, that's from Home Alone! You ripped off Home Alone!
Hey, I'm calling the cops!
Wait, he wants us to follow him.
So, there's a lot of things that make me go, okay, this is T2, this is a lot of movies from the 90s that I love, and it didn't make me think, hey, look, this is like so cool that they're playing a homage to these kinds of movies that I love. It felt more copy-paste, which kind of made the movie feel less than, in my opinion, and that's why I'm going to give Don't Breathe 2 a C-. But as far as Part 3 and Part 2's ending, yeah, it's kind of cheap when you kind of kill your characters and then bring them back anyway. And I don't know, I kind of agree with everybody when they say that you can't really redeem this character. Anyway, I'd love to know what you guys think of Don't Breathe Part 2. Do you think Norman Nordstrom is still breathing, and should they return for a third entry? Be sure to sound off in the comments down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is John, here on Burns Reviews. You just got burned. Click that notification bell, and we will see you next time.